Good evening, everyone. You're in the right place at the right time. This is Coast to Coast AM. My name is Feorge Knapp, your occasional host. Tonight, I think we've got something that people will be talking about for a long time. In more recent years, it's been waves of stories, sometimes disinformation, anticipation, predictions of imminent disclosure. Yeah, any minute now we're going to, roll open the hangar doors and let us see the recovered alien spacecraft. Family tours of Area 51. Bring mom, bring the kids, toss grandpa in the station wagon, head out to Groom Lake to see the alien bodies in formaldehyde. And then, months drag on, years go by, nothing happens. Then someone else starts leaking the story that the big announcement is just around the corner. We've been through it a few times, a couple of times when this has happened. Maybe you heard our colleague Linda Howe telling her audiences that 2016 is going to be a big year about revelations on this topic. It makes you wonder what's going on here. And into the middle of this buzz comes Tom DeLonge, a rock star, seemingly an improbable UFO messiah. Could Tom DeLonge do what generations of UFO researchers, scientists, government insiders, and whistleblowers have been unable to do? Tell the story. Dig out the real story and tell it in a way that has not been told before. How to make sense out of the alleged cover-up, why it started, how it's been maintained, but also to understand who the visitors are, or more precisely, who the others are. And I'm using air quotes around the others. That's the term used by some of the high-level sources developed by musician Tom DeLonge. The story of how he got to where he is and what he has learned so far should be a movie, and maybe it will be a movie. But over the next 4 hours, we're going to hear this tale, how he started down this unlikely road, the dramatic business decision he made about a year ago, changing the direction of his life and his fortune, and the amazing series or chain of events which have led Tom from one insider to another, stitching together an informal network of like-minded people who now seem to want the public to know the story. If you think you know how it works or why it's been handled this way, hold on to your seats because the tale you're going to hear tonight will turn things upside down. I guess the question is, can we believe it? Is it disinformation? Is it a trick or misdirection? Is Tom DeLonge being used or played, or is he really onto something of global significance? It's going to be fun finding out. Tom will join me a few minutes from now, and we will start peeling back the layers of the onion to reveal what's underneath. I got a call about 5 years ago, I think it was, out of the blue from a guy who said his name was Tom DeLonge. He had a band called Blink 182, and I'd heard of them, of course, and I'd heard his name. Welcome back to the program, Tom DeLonge. Tom, good to have you.
How are you? But I'm so excited to be here. This is always. I listened to Coast for 20-some years, and this is my third time being on here.
Yeah. So describe it. Describe the parameters of this project, what it involves.
Well, I knew that this was the greatest story never told. I knew that you don't even have to sensationalize anything about this subject, and it would blow people's minds. I also knew that it's never really been told in an elevated artistic way. You never really had, other than Close Encounters that Spielberg did so many years ago, that's probably the only one on a major level that took it decently seriously and put concepts out there for people to digest and think about and walk away saying, wow, because it was so elevated in the approach. I mean, it's the best director of all time. I thought that we kind of needed to do something like that again, but because I do know a lot about this subject, and I do know the complexities involved, and I do know that it is a national security issue and a global security issue, that I didn't want to come out and be this very public figure saying some of these things that I knew needed to be said without permission. So the whole project was, how do we do major motion pictures with documentaries, with novels, with nonfiction books, with step-by-step we kind of entertain and educate. And it all went back to not too many years ago when I was watching that movie 13 Days with Kevin Costner on the Cuban Missile Crisis. We've all been told about the Cuban Missile Crisis in school. They're like, oh my God, we almost died, and they're going to put weapons in Cuba, and we almost died. Did we tell you that we almost died? You know, and you're like, okay, I got it. And you walk out of high school, and you don't really, the enormity of it thrown on your lap, you don't really digest it. So I was watching that movie, and it kind of, you know, step by step, you go through the debates, and you're seeing the arguments, you're seeing the fear, and you're seeing how families act, and you're like, wow, that was a pretty heavy time in our history. So I left, and I went to the bookstore to buy the actual recordings of JFK in the Oval Office. I wanted to hear those debates. I wanted to hear, you know, how they dealt with the, you know, the idea that nuclear war could break out at any minute. I wanted to see what those guys were saying, you know, to figure it out, to decode that problem. And that's what I want to do with this project, where you pull people in and you galvanize them over the issue, and then they want to go and absorb the nonfiction elements. And when people start to understand more about the UFO phenomenon, and when they follow what Secret Machines is going to teach them, and mind you, as we'll talk about this in a little bit, it's not all coming from me, it's coming from other people of the highest places, that, you know, there's that the term the occult in that whole world is much more a part of the UFO phenomenon than, and that's part of what makes it more complex than just little green men in flying saucers and tinfoil hats, you know. So,
but tell me about the documentary projects, as much as you want to reveal right now, about the kind of people you're talking to and what those subjects will be.
Sure. Well, when we started this project, I wanted to document my efforts of meeting the people in charge and telling the story about how I am basically building, hopefully, you know, one of the largest covert communications vehicles that's been put together. And because I can't come out and tell everybody who these people are, and because I can't run around showing pictures and resumes and bios of who these, where these people have been, I figured the next best way to do it is to document and to tell the story of how I met these people and the information they've been giving me, and how we're going to attempt to communicate some of these things to people. And it's big stuff. And some of it's scary stuff. And like I said earlier, it's going to hit people's belief systems pretty hard on some issues. And you know, it just needs to come out over time, and we need to finesse a certain way to build it all on. First, you know, finesse it in a way to where we build it all on credibility. So when they read the Secret Machines novel and novels, they understand that we're not just trying to entertain them, that there's things in this book that were given to me that have never been given to the world ever in relationship to what the UFO phenomenon is and where it's from and what it's doing. A lot of this book is laying the foundation for even bigger stuff that's coming on book 2.
I want to talk for a moment about the political scene. You've had very open communications with Podesta. His interest in this goes way, way back.
Yeah, I think people need to take, very, very, very strong notice of what's going on when Hillary Clinton comes on the Jimmy Kimmel show like she did a couple nights ago and says, we are going to dig in and bring out the UFO files, quote, unless it has to do with national security. That was the one caveat. So she's saying this needs to come out, but there might be some things that's going to hold some of it back. And she's letting you know with breadcrumbs here that there are national security issues with this stuff. And there are global security issues with this stuff. So her campaign manager, John Podesta, is a very, very powerful and important person. And a lot of this audience knows of him because he tweeted a few times about UFOs. One of his famous tweets last year was that his biggest failure for 2014 was not getting the UFO files released. The story there was I reached out and I told him what I was trying to achieve with this project, and he was very quiet on the phone. He was listening, and I kind of went through what my objectives were, and I have my pitch down, but I'm speaking very respectfully, and I'm trying to lay out all the reasons why this needs to happen. But I didn't think that I really got through to him And for all I knew, he thought I was just some crazy, rock star that wants to talk about something weird, but I knew he was into this stuff, but I just didn't know how much or whatever. So he said, call me in a couple months. I'm pretty busy, and we'll see where we're at. I was like, cool. I never called him back because I didn't think he was really, absorbing what I pitched him. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just get this flurry of emails from his office that he wants to be in this, and I have to come out to D.C., and it's a major priority, and the rest is history. But I think people need to understand that we're in a transition here with this topic, and that some really big things are about to happen.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at here, is because I know for some listeners who just can't stand Hillary Clinton, it's trouble. They have trouble even listening to this part of it. But just set that stuff aside for a second and think for a moment about the significance of a major presidential candidate talking about this issue. It's like somebody flipped a light switch or something.
Well, you have an issue that's going to tackle cosmology and religion and scientific breakthroughs that will seem like magic to people. It'll relationships with countries that we're not supposed to have relationships with. Defense systems that we've been building secretly with enormous amounts of money for a very long period of time, where people, if they knew about it, would probably be in an uproar until they knew the reasons why, and then they would say, "Why didn't you tell me? I wish I could have helped you." The more that I found out about this stuff, and once they started giving me the information, I realized that all these young people are going to look at these areas of our government and say, "You guys are heroes. You guys are doing heroic stuff, incredible stuff, and no one knows about it, and you're letting all these weirdos on the internet define you and say it's all a big conspiracy, it's the big bad secret government, keeping secrets because they're better than us, or we can't handle the truth, or they're doing it for money and to control the world." Nothing could be further from the truth. Once you understand why they're keeping their efforts secret and what they've been doing, you will realize that they need to be empowered, and they need to be given every bit of resource that they could possibly need for what they're doing. And I'm excited to tell that part of the story. I'm excited for people to understand that these are good people doing important work, that thank God they were doing it.
Well, what it makes you wonder is, I made the comparison to somebody flipping a light switch, whether a green light has been given to a variety of people in the government that it's okay to start dribbling stuff out. I mean, people are talking to you. Someone somewhere knows those conversations are underway. I'm just wondering where ultimately this come from. Did they have a conference call and everybody said, "Okay, now's the time," or what do you think about it?
Well, it's hard to say. I think that I came in and brought an idea to the table that they don't readily have. I said, I walked in there with a voice, that they don't really have a position that speaks to young people the way I do. I also walked in there with, a thesis on the phenomenon that is correct. That's totally different than just visitors from another planet. So when they saw that I actually knew what I was talking about, I think that caught them a little bit off guard. And then I also said, I have a plan to do something that looks like this. And I kind of laid out the whole Secret Machines project. And they probably thought that was really interesting. But when I started executing, when I actually started doing the work and pulling the people together and getting all these advisors and writing the novel, and the novel being good and the documentary being good, and everything happening the way I said it would, I think I built up an enormous amount of trust with these guys. But we have to be really clear here. I'm very respectful. I'm very formal about it. Everything's a yes sir and no sir. I'm speaking to guys where you can count all the stars on their shoulders. I mean, really, and I try to run this like a real program, the way they would want it run. So everything gets approval.